Okay, this is the first of a series of video lectures on how to mix your paints for our first color project, our 3 or 4 color project. I have created 2 sheets with 2 designs featured that you can see here, and I have added my CMYK breakdowns. I went to the Pantone site, copied and pasted in my percentages here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to select from this sheet first colors to mix as examples of how I would approach mixing particular colors. So I'm going to start with this bottom piece, 3 color, and I'm going to start mixing our light kind of spring green that we have here, which is 17-0-75-0. So 70% cyan, no red, and 75% yellow. So that is a very light color. That's about a 10% gray. And if you want, you can notate what you think the gray, equivalent gray value is next to your color, just as a kind of reference for yourself. But in terms of color mixing, you're going to be kind of eyeballing this. So what do I start with? Well, since yellow is the dominant color at 75%, I'm actually going to mix yellow first. Now, I have some different trays. I have these, small. These are great for mixing a small amount of color, but for your project, I actually recommend this size cup. The reason I recommend this is about how much ink you're going to need for, say, printing that background box of color. You're going to need to make 12 prints. You're probably going to want to fill that about 2/3 to 3/4 full for that first color, if you're going to print underneath everything and do a full box. If you were just going to print these sections and do a registration, which you may opt to, then you're talking about maybe 1/3 that amount of ink. I would go with half a cup full to make sure you don't run out. Maybe still 2/3 just to be safe. Next, excuse me, dominant color is this pink. That I'm going to, again, 2/3 of a cup for that color. So the final color, the yellow, I've got my colors fairly evenly distributed in surface area. I probably go with half a cup for that yellow. Although if I print the yellow as a big shape, I'm going to go with 3/4 of a cup. That's just to make sure I don't run out. Better not to run out in the middle of your print run and not have to hurriedly mix ink. You can do that. But as you know, your screen dries as you're doing that, and then your colors may shift a little bit. That last fine color, small area, that's going to be just maybe a 1/4 cup. So, starting with that green, if by percentages I know that I'm mixing a color that is 75% yellow, I'm actually going to use yellow first. And by the way, you can see plastic spoons and forks are great for mixing. Just wash them off after you're done. You can reuse them. I'm going to add a dollop of yellow here. Now remember, I'm not mixing the full amount that you would do for a screen print run. I recommend too, mix a small amount of ink like this first. Learn how to hit the color, the tone, the value, the hue and the value really, before you mix the full amount. So you can ramp it up as you feel that you're confident in getting the mix you want. So I'm starting with my yellow. Now, cyan is the only other color in here, because we're going with a tiny bit of light green. And to remind you, our cyan is 17%. So I'm going to eyeball that. Literally, this is how much I'm looking at adding to my yellow. And we'll give this a try. What I do is I just kind of daub it on the side. I'll keep this particular tool clean so I can put it back into my blue. And then I'm actually going to use a separate spoon or knife, and I'm going to start mixing, as you can see here. And I chose these pans because they're opaque rather than clear plastic. I thought maybe it'd be easier to see what's happening as I'm mixing my color. I'll kind of bring it in closer. And as I say, this is what I would do in class. For each of you, we'd look at how you mix each of your colors, and I do a little swatch for you, and then you would actually be off and running mixing your colors. The first round of mixing colors is always the toughest. By the next project, the type color print project, you'll be a lot more confident in mixing your colors. Now I can tell already, looking at this, that I've got too much blue, which is fine. You know, make a mistake and I'll show you what you do. So if I have too much blue, I know, number one, it's a good thing I did with a small amount and didn't put the entire amount of ink in. So I'm not wasting a lot of ink. But if I compare this color, and this is why I have two sheets out, I'm just going to drop that color down. I'm actually going to try and grab, use your finger, just do a swatch like that. And then like a dab, there you go. Okay, so and keep paper towel handy, that's always good to have, just to kind of keep things as clean as you can. Now, I'm going to put my swatch next to it. And you can see, hopefully, this is my green in my printout right here. I got way too much blue here. So what to do here? Well, I can try to edit or alter this particular batch, and let's try and do that. Now, you notice I'm putting in a lot of yellow. Another thing I may do is add some white, though. Yellow is typically the color we run out of first if we do run out of colors in our CMYK. The other is white, because they are most commonly added to the other colors to lighten and to shift towards, say, a green or towards yellow or orange. So you can see not a lot of change here. And again, you know, I have a little bit of impurities on this side. I'm just going to mix those in, so I'm actually getting more blue back in there. I know right now, best plan here would be to start over. I made a mistake, which is good to show. So let's actually do this again. We're going to start with yellow again. Again, not using too much. Just try this small amount. And then I'm actually going to take this color, which I've already mixed, and I'm just going to put a little bit in there. And now, with a separate spoon, I'm going to try mixing that. And you can see right away I'm closer to the color that I want, which I'm going to put right there. Yeah, I'm much closer. Still a little bit much blue. I think what I will do here is add a bit of white. Now, if I add a little daub of paint, this is the best way to test right here. Just a little bit of finger painting. You can do a little daub. You can use a brush too and just wash it out. And just spread it on your paper. Now you can see that's a pretty big color shift that just happened there. And if you look next to the swatch, my swatch, if you can see it here, is a little darker in value. Which means I can probably get away, I don't know, if I add white, I'm going to lighten it, but, and there's no black, so I really don't want to add black to yellow. As you know, we've talked about that, black is deadly with yellow. And what would I do here? Well, every medium is peculiar. There is no apparent red in this color. That means I either just add more blue and risk it getting a little bit too green, which I'm going to add some here. But there's another thing I can do, a little trick. This is that it's good to know this, because when you get into color mixing in any medium, whether it's watercolor, acrylics, even with colored pencils, I find this to be true, is that sometimes you need to do something that you don't see in these percentage breakdowns to make it work. So I'm going to do another test. And again, we are definitely greener. I'm not unhappy with that, but it's too green for me, but it's the right tone. If you look, let me see if I can lift this up, make sure you can see a good comparison by tone here. There's my three swatches. You can see this top one right here, closest in value, but it's a bit too blue. What do I do? I'm going to use a little trick, and that is I'm going to add a tiny bit of red. And it is going to be ever so tiny. So literally I'm just going to put a little bit of the red on the rim of my cup area. then I'm going to mix that in. So what is this red going to do? Well, you know that red is a complement of green. It's also, this is the part you may not think about, it's also a much darker value. Which means if I feel that I need to desaturate this color because it looks too green, I'm going to add a tiny bit of red. Now I've overshot it. And we'll actually do a swatch here to show you. Actually, maybe I haven't. It's taken on a tone and a quality much closer to my printout. Now here's another thing. I printed out my swatches, and when you print a color from the screen, it's different. Which you'll find out if you go into design. Proofing is always different than what you see on screen with your project. But just look at this. This is interesting. This swatch right here is definitely the closest to my swatch CMYK breakdown. And you can see it here. Oops. This breakdown, try to get them closer together. This breakdown 17075, closest to that. I'm actually pretty happy with that. So my formula for mixing this color is going to be about 90% yellow, perhaps even 95% yellow, a 5% blue, based on what I just did, and then maybe 1% red. That's going to hit the tone that I want. Why does that work when this clearly says there's no red in here? Because every media is unique. Even this printout is a unique media. It's different than what I had on screen. This did not look quite this dark on screen. So you adjust, if you send a job to a printer, you've got to make adjustments. The printer also, that's their job too. They're going to have you come in and do a proof check to make sure you approve what they're getting as a result for your job. Because in translation, a lot gets lost, even when it's an algorithm. So that takes care of that color. Now, let's take on another color here. Let's go for this kind of salmon color. Now, I made the rule that 50% or lighter, you're going to start with the lightest tone. I'm going to start with the yellow. Yellow is the dominant tone here. How do I know? Well, number one, it's 90%, and then the red is 59%. I can tell you right away, that much red is going to make this get too dark. It's going to look more like this swatch about. You'll kind of get the hang of this and realize that the numbers are misleading, but that's one of the reasons we do this. There's a big difference between mixing paint for a painting, for example, and using those sliders in a program. And it's really good experience to do both. So you can see that CMYK color, printing color, it behaves very differently. So let's actually start with that yellow. Let's see if I can hit the mark on the first try. Always cool when you do it on the first try. Maybe not as instructive, but okay. So like I said, that says 59% red, but look at how little the amount of red that I'm in. In fact, I think that's even too much. This is more like at most 10% of the yellow that I just put in there. So here we go. Start mixing it in. It's always good to start tentatively, so be cautious, kind of underestimate the amount of red in this case that you think will get you there. Now this salmon color is probably not going to be quite as bright in the mixed version with my inks as it is in that printout. And the printout is not as bright as it looked on my computer screen. If you're going, and many of you are going from a color pencil study, you may find that your colors has to be a bit darker to achieve the saturation that matches your color study in color pencil. That's perfectly fine. In that case, you may have to add a little white, which means you're going to desaturate your color, which means it's going to look a little less intense, a little less saturated. So you can see what I've got here. Now we compare that. Let's put the spoon right up against the color. And you can see, hopefully, that color on the spoon, not quite as bright and as intense, not as salmon. But I really think you need to put a swatch on paper here like this, so I'm going to take yet another finger and put a swatch of color down. That gives you the closest thing to what you're going to get when you push that ink through your screen. Now, if we compare, it's actually not bad. Knowing that I can't get the intensity of color, I've hit the value correctly. So this is my, again, I need 3 hands for this. That's my color I'm trying to mix. I've actually hit the value. That looks about the same. It's about a 30% gray. I know it may seem lighter because it's a bright, happy color. But what if I wanted to increase intensity? The only way I could do that is to add a bit more yellow. If I do that, it's going to lighten it a little bit. Now, this is a good thing to remember too. If you're lightening a color, yellow is not going to do much for you. You have to add white to lighten. That means you're going to desaturate at the same time, which means you're going to have to add more yellow in at the same time to bring the color saturation back. So it's going to be a little bit of a 2 steps forward, 1 step back scenario. I'm going to try adding a little bit more yellow. So I'm going to go back to my yellow supply. We'll just see what it does. And most likely it's simply going to lighten, but it may shift it a little bit more towards yellow. Salmon being, you might almost call salmon a pink with yellow added. You know, it shifts it away from like a pure Valentine's Day heart pink into more of a yellow towards a fuchsia kind of color. And now if you were getting deeper into screen printing, you could buy and specialty inks, I shouldn't say specialty, but actually pre-mixed colors that would give you something closer to that fuchsia. So a print shop, like a t-shirt shop, they have colors they can draw from much more complex than our simple primers. Why do we use primers? So that you can actually learn color mixing at the most basic and fundamental level. So there's my second swatch. We'll compare that. And it definitely looks a little more yellow, but I haven't really increased intensity to me. I'm a little happier with the first one, actually. So that would be, that means I just add a little bit of red back in and probably leave it. That would be the color I would accept for my mid-tone in the lily. Now we'll go to the red. For the red, that is a mid-tone. It's actually darker than 50%. What would I do here? I'm going to say, let's start with yellow again. Why do I do that? Because I'm afraid that if I start with the red, if you look, let's actually do a swatch of pure red. Red is that dark. And actually it's good to put a swatch of the pure primary down. So you can see, that might work actually. That red is it's about an 80%. So let's actually try it. I'm going to try red first. I'll follow my own rules that I said. Okay. So about that much red. As I said before, these are small batches just to see what combination is going to give me my color. I would say to write down the rough percentage you think you added to get the combination right. It's always helpful to do that. I'm now adding about 50% of the amount of yellow. And if I check that swatch, Pantone swatch, it's going to tell me that my red is 92 and my yellow is 72. If they were both 100, that'd be full saturation. No CMYK, no cyan, and no black. Actually, there is black. Look at that. There's a 6% component of black. I'm not gonna add black at this point. As I say, black is the last thing I'm going to add, because it is going to deaden colors if I'm not careful. If I can achieve what I'm after, I'm actually going to use this spoon because these contain the same colors. We're going to start with just the red and the yellow. Let's see if that gets us the tone we want. And right away I can see that it's still too dark. And what am I going to do about that? Well, we do have an option here, and that's white. So that's the first white we're going to use. I'm going to drop in a little bit of white. I want to lighten the color. As I say, I try to hit the tone, the value. So when I say tone, I'm actually meaning value in this case, the actual grayscale value first. And I don't want to add too much white because it will desaturate too much and then we'll get into like soft pink tones, and I don't want that. Okay, let's take a swatch of that. It's actually not bad. So if I put the printed swatch next to it, hold it up to the camera, you can see I'm a little redder with my swatch here than this printout is a little bit leaning a little bit towards my salmon color because I wanted those two reds to harmonize. I have more yellow in them. What I would do here is add a little bit more white. It needs to go a little bit lighter, and then I would pump in some more yellow. And that would probably get you where you want to be. It's a fairly simple color there to mix. I would say the salmon orange and yellow orange colors are pretty easy to mix. Always go to yellow first, then add the white to hit the value. Once you have value established, then check for where you are in the color spectrum. Is it too warm or is it too cool? Is it leaning too much towards yellow or is it leaning too much towards the blue side of red? In which case you got a magenta. So you can see I just put a lot of yellow in there. And see what that does. Sometimes this just does it. It solves the problem. You can also begin to see why yellow is one of the three primaries, yellow is the one we run out of first. If you do run out of one of your primary colors, just go to one of the art stores or order it online in advance. Try to give it, whatever time you need to get it for the next project. But if you're careful and follow the strategy I'm following, you should not run out of ink. Basically, what I'm showing you is a way to strategize in mixing your colors so you're not having to mix a whole nother batch because you mixed the blue in first and it stayed too dark, and then you got to remix a new batch. Okay, so we're going to try a swatch of this. Not too much difference, a little subtle. It does look more yellow. I'm happier with this color. So the one we're matching, I'll turn this right side up, is that red. That's not bad. Still a little bit more red, a little bit more towards geranium red, so I probably add just a touch more white again and a touch more yellow to get it up to that red. That's CMYK 09272.6. I would not add black. Why not? Well, because I think black would just deaden the color. It's already in the same spectrum of intensity. I don't feel it needs the black. What I would actually do is just stick with a white. If you wanted to, you could add a tiny bit of black. When I say tiny, I really mean just an absolutely tiny amount. That would gray the color. Because I've added white, it's going to act like a gray now, rather than just a shade. Okay, so that takes care of our first example, which was this. I'll do another video for our next set of colors, and I'll pick it up there.